Okay, we're starting. Good morning, everybody, or evening, or wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Create a World. We are collaborators of people who are not interested in, really dedicated to, really passionate about uh, showcasing aspects of life that have to do with creating a world. That's the long and short of it. Victoria, what would you like to say?
And it's important for us to recognize what creating a world is for us.
Yeah.
Um, and part of the conversation of today that I wanted to join in is this idea of in our everyday life,
Yeah.
how do we create our world? How do we see what's coming into our reality that we're creating and what's leaving, what's no longer um, worthy of our attention, how we perceive ourselves
Hmm.
and how we feel the fullness in everyday existence. That was like what sparked our conversation for today in the picking of apricots and what the like Tantra used the words a few minutes ago, the chubbiness of apricots. And that feels that word chubbiness is the fullness, the nectar, the amrita of life. And so how's our everyday life full?
Yeah, I want to respond to that because what's in the background of this conversation is not those of us that come on to create a world have the answer. It's just we're living something. That's what I was writing, Michelle, before it blipped off. We're living something. And the only way we know how to share living it is to get on screen and have conversations, not about what we have handled or what we know, but what is, there we go, and what is living us and we're living it. And that's a phenomenon of a renaissance. We
Hmm.
noticed in a renaissance, you notice things, you become aware of things. You aren't, the prior knowledge doesn't apply to the present experience. And so it's not a solution to surviving everything that's collapsing right now. It's finding out we don't seem to be related to the collapse as much as we were related to it. We seem to be, we seem to find ourselves in uh, experiential states that seem to have seem to be here. I mean, actually here in the physical world. So I have to do my latest apricot share. So I come out. So you all, the last 3 days have been 40-mile-an-hour winds. So Victoria and I and Kristen and Geraldine, and we all thought that we had picked a lot of apricots. And they're in Victoria's house and Kristen's house and Geraldine's house and my house. I go out yesterday, there are probably 400 apricots between the backyard and front yard, totally fine apricots lying on the ground. And I just looked at it because I have about 3 gallons in my kitchen and said, okay, and walked back in the door. Okay, can't go there. I get up this morning. There's a woman, she's probably in her late 70s. And I go out the door and I said, oh my goodness. And she's picking them up off the ground. She has cleaned my driveway in her bags.
Wow.
And she said, oh, is it okay if I pick apricots? I knocked on the door a few years ago. That's when I was ill. And nobody answered. So I said, please. And so she leaves 2 bags. I come back from the store because I had to go buy chestnuts today. I come back from the store. She has 4 bags. And I said, okay, her name was Faye. And I said, okay, put the bags in the car. I'm taking you home. You can't possibly carry these bags. So now she goes home. So I take her home with the 4 bags. And this is the miraculous part. The miraculous part is my front yard is cleaned up. It's this shared feel phenomenon that we've been talking about forever, but it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to live it, and it's happening. These occurrences are happening in our, this is where I don't know how to transmit the information, but it's happening in our everyday lives. It's as if our everyday lives are part of not our everyday circumstances, because all of us have the same challenges pretty much. But our experience is starting to have a different contrast than always being affected by what's traumatized, what is traumatizing, basically. I've got one more, but that's enough for me right now.
Yeah. So it's registering what's life enhancing is how I'm hearing it. Because
Finding ourselves doing that, because it's not like
yes,
we're planning on it.
right, right. But like something is rising inside us. Because what I just, for anybody listening, and mostly I'm doing this because of a comment I read where I saw the person said, I didn't really understand most of the conversation. So I'm just going to say this. What we mean by circumstance is things like, job and bringing in income, uh, uh, whether you're ill or not, or a relative, or, caretaking, the circumstances that seem to construct a life or, sort of give you a pathway. And everybody has those. You take care of your health, you brush your teeth, you have these kind of parameters, but we're not in a time anymore where that's the sum total of life. And what we think about those circumstances and how it makes us feel and what we have to do about it, that's no longer the sum total of life. It's like there's something else. There always has been something else, probably, but a lot of people seem to be finding themselves in something else. And that, at least for me, helps with tending the circumstances. Because we live in a physical body on a physical plane of existence, those circumstances aren't going to go away. They're going to morph, they're going to, whatever it is. And there's a lot of dire circumstances in the world. But this thing that's rising of, wow, let's get all excited. And one of the things Tantra did, she's got these apricots everywhere, and she wanted to pick with people. So she just put on our community thread, and people from all over the place were finding apricots. They went to their store and bought apricots. Victoria put a beautiful recipe that I've printed now. I haven't done it. Um, a recipe for the jam that's so simple, even I can do it. Yeah. So everybody was joining Tantra in picking apricots and Victoria in making jam and being creative, and just responding to something beautiful and joyful and making it even more beautiful and joyful by spreading it. That seems to be just happening these days a lot. So, yeah.
And I love the image of spreading joy, like spreading jam.
Yeah.
And and the other day, after we were picking apricots together, Tundra, I had a few minutes of spare time, and I decided to go to this new cafe that someone had told me about and check it out. And I thought, well, I'll have time to get a cup of tea, and it's a French pastry place.
Mm.
So I'm seeing apricot scones there, and I'm seeing these beautiful sourdough bread loaves that had just been baked that morning. And immediately it was, oh, I'll have one of those, please. Because I have all this jam to spread on this delicious bread. So I too am feeling chubby cheeked from eating sourdough bread this week. And I loved how Deb, you used the word that we respond to and how we respond to circumstance. I think that's the magic of what our conversation is that sense of, yes, we're all in circumstance, and how are we paying attention and responding to what is calling us from that circumstance. And I think that's where people are giving a different kind of attention. And specifically, I came into this conversation this morning to share about how I'm recognizing and responding to a young woman who I've been interacting with in a class. And there's something rising in the 20-somethings, teens, 20-somethings that I'm truly intrigued by. And I'm excited to have coffee with her Saturday morning because I want to know more.
Yep.
And that's the responding to, she brought me a book that she'd been paying attention to. And I'm reading this book about thinking. And there's a difference between thought and thinking. When a thought comes in, it's simply the presence of and the clarity of. When you go about thinking about it, that's when you're at the effect of the circumstance. And I'm like, oh, this is how we operate in the field of Tantra Maat community. That we are simply receiving thought and responding back to thought. And there's that magic in the everyday. And when we get looped into the thinking pattern is when we get at the effect of it. So I immediately was reading this that she'd given me, and I said, oh, I want to share a book with her. You borrow this one, and then let's get together from you as the mind of creation. I want to see what prompts in her.
Wow.
Because I have this interest in being in conversation with younger people. I'm intrigued, and I don't know if you guys are noticing this and how it's coming up, but so I'm putting a call out to the young people. I'd love to be in conversation with you.
Agreed. And I want that book title, please. If you don't have it this minute, can you put it?
I will get it to you.
Okay, because that fascinates me. That fascinates me.
And I will put it on the CreateAWorld Facebook page.
Perfect.
I want to go back to the apricots again, because another thing that happened is when I was leading the Architecting Your Magician of Self for the Europeans, one of the things that Deb was talking about, this sort of synchronic, they're showing up in our field, apricots are. And on Father's Day, one of our participants, Mark, got an email for Father's Day from a company he had never heard of in his whole life, from a European country, selling the kernels of apricots. And in the meantime, Victoria and I, that same day, were picking apricots, and my granddog, Kevin, was suddenly eating apricots, cracking the shell, spitting the shell out, and eating the kernel. And then supposedly the cyanide, which is now I know the shell, not the kernel, actually can kill a dog. But he was spitting them out. But since Victoria and I didn't know, we closed him off from the backyard so he couldn't eat any more apricots. And he got a don't eat apricots lessons. And I watched him all day. I was paranoid all day that he was going to die of cyanide poisoning. And this whole discussion ended up on our WhatsApp thread. But here's the key. We were paying attention to something was shifting, something was or had shifted. Normally, so much of the norm is, oh my, something to fear, something to fear, something to
Right.
fear, something to not do, something to not do, something to protect ourselves from. But actually, it ended up in discovery and exploration.
Yep.
And Mark said, I'm going to write the company, get the details, because all they sell is apricot kernels. That's all they sell around the world. So there's something symbolic about that, about getting to the bottom of things, finding out what the now truth is. Because it's very possible before any of us knew about kernels and shells, and if you look at Google, it doesn't differentiate between kernels and shells. It just says if you eat the the kernel of an apricot, you'll die. But do they actually mean shell? And so it's this phenomenon I've watched in the cultural aspect, those of us that are participating daily. But because a lot of people are connected that don't participate anymore, but they're in the larger collective, in the larger collection of humanity. So it shows that there's some brain function now trying to get to the bottom of things. And again, Michelle that wrote the message to us that I tried to find where she'd met it, where she'd written it. She also said she didn't understand, but you could tell she stayed listening.
Yep.
Because there was something now that she may for herself, whatever got inspired, get to the bottom of, which is why we keep doing this every week.
Right.
Beautiful.
And I want to add to that, what I've noticed from that, and I love that part of our community thread where they were saying, oh, well, I've heard this and I've heard that, and I wonder if it's this. And it was that exploration and discovery, not what used to be afraid of apricot pits and don't eat them. And, so there's a change in responding to things. And I'm finding it's nothing dramatic, but I'm finding it's feeding back into responding to circumstances. Because I keep thinking of, there's a lot of people having some pretty doggone dire circumstances. A lot of flooding happened in, I think it was Texas. There's things happening in Israel and Palestine that are horrific. There's huge circumstances going on. And beyond any politics or anything like that or positions, it's people having to deal with horrific conditions. And even within that, I've seen ways of responding that changes it. Maybe only a jot, like someone posted a song. I saw a song that got posted that was just about love and beauty. Now, does that feed these people? Does it reconstruct the buildings that are bombed out or the house that got knocked down by the tornado? No. But it soothes the soul. It changes the mind, which means it's going to change the circumstance. And I've noticed kind of a lot of that. And even our own self in respond to our own circumstances, it's leading to choices that might seem little, they might be big, but it's changing a response to circumstances.
I
think it's cool.
Yeah, I want to also add to that technically, and Deb, you probably know more about it than any of us. The real problem with trauma is no relief from it.
Yeah.
But human beings are capable of going through a tremendous amount of trauma if they can be relieved of it in between. So that song is like a relief. So just to add three other things, also the reason I formed a cultural collective is a cultural collective means we're interested in the culture of human being. It doesn't mean we're interested in a Semitic or a local or any kind of dogmatic culture. But what I noticed 2 days ago was at the same time this is happening, I'm not going to give the details because they're not to be public. But because I formed the community, I get information from all over the world. And then in our WhatsApp thread, we get information from all over the world. And our interest is what Deb said about what connects us to life and has us exist as whole.
Mhm.
So basically, we're tracking that. We're not trying to promote it, but we're tracking it because everything else is tracking what's wrong with the world, basically. It's not a Pollyanna thing, it's to bring harmony. And of course, that's the principle of Maat is harmony, balance, symmetry, proportion, grace, and beauty. So in the field of Tantra Maat, we promote harmony, grace, all those dynamics simply because it can provide balance. So and this work that I'm participating in, not work, but these once a month conversations I'm in with people from the Middle East of all faiths, women, is because what they do on that is they literally be with the people who are in the midst of the bombing, who don't even know if they'll be alive the next day, who find their way to the internet so that they can collectively be on a call once a month to relieve the trauma. Because the thing is, we can't. My computer seems to be excessively happy today. And of course, it's balloons, Victoria, because we're in Albuquerque.
Exactly.
The
They
balloon
were out
kingdom.
this morning.
Oh, were they? Well, clearly there's a response.
Yeah.
But the point is that people want circumstances to change, but these circumstances have been on their way for a very long time. But what we can be with each other and provide under these conditions that we have no power over is the relief of trauma and the remembrance of the quality of life that we can live under almost any condition if we're not alone and helpless and unloved and uncared for. It's the unloved, uncared for, and the unignored that makes it brutal for human beings to survive these kind of times. That's what I wanted to say.
Because I want to do a teensy bit of technical around trauma, is by adding what's lovely and life enhancing, resilience is actually promoted.
Brilliant.
The nobody has figured out that I'm aware of yet what has some people go through a trauma. And a trauma is something that overloads your psyche, your physical circuitry. You're just so overloaded, it's like all your circuits get blown. That's my my favorite description of traumatic stress. And that differs from person to person for all kinds of reasons in their life path. But what promotes resilience and the ability to kind of massage that overload, and that's a super oversimplification, is things like what Tantra's talking about: support, knowing somebody out there loves you, and sometimes it really is material things like feeding starving children, for example. Um, but the support, the adding something lovely back in, the relief that interrupts that overload, because once the circuits are blown, then that's like a constant throughout everything. And it can spread like an infection, actually, to different aspects of your life. And this is a real, oversimplification, but that brings it down to what every human being can do with and for each other is the responding with life-enhancing interaction, just putting it in, because just just putting it in the space, and you get, I love that phrase, you get a moment of relief, which then allows this. This is part of why I want to read that book and hear more of your conversation with your young person, Victoria, because this shifts thinking. If I'm understanding how this book and this young person's defining thinking, because to me, thinking is a real positive phenomenon. Is that how it is in the book and in the conversation, or is it opposite?
It's more like thunking in my book.
Thank you.
It's more
Yeah.
like thinking you is what she's talking about. It's a
Oh,
great distinction because
Exactly.
she's actually distinguishing the feel phenomenon of thought.
Exactly.
So we can get a thought, and that thought can anchor us or it can destroy us.
mm-hmm.
But that thought, and that's what we're talking about here, this new thoughtness. I love that. We have to coin this. Thank her. This new thoughtness, that we're getting new thoughtness that seems to relieve the trauma. That we're getting new thought frames that seem to take us out of what our thinking tries to predict as a circumstance. If you don't have the money to pay your bill tomorrow, you're doomed. God doesn't love you. All is going to crash in on you. But a thought, remember the voice when it first came to me, I talk about when I was 5? I was under tremendous trauma, tremendous, violent, psychologically damaging trauma. And this voice would go, "You're all right." And you know what? In that thought, I was all right. And Victoria, I'm going to turn to you, but I want to add something. The other thing that is, someone asked me the other day why I was spending every day picking up apricots. Actually, I was sharing it with Victoria. But I'm really serious about why I'm picking up apricots and why I'm thrilled every time. Like the lady's coming back and I'm going to put her in the backyard because Kevin's gone for 3 days and she can just, whatever she's doing to her heart content, and then I will take her home because the earth hears me.
Yes.
The earth hears what I'm doing. And we act like she's inanimate, and she's not inanimate. And on that group of people, the Women Heart to Heart, there's this Palestine and Gaza conflict. They actually say in the beginning of their video, we're doing this so that our gods can hear us. So that we're saying to our gods, because it's a God war, we're saying to our gods, our individual God, whether it's Jehovah or Muhammad's God, that we don't want this conflict, that we want to be the principles of love and the principles that are taught in the point of origin of our God, of these gods. So it's a vertical phenomenon. That's for me what makes this time extraordinary. And as you know, back when I started in my 30s, I talked about there's been a cave-in between our direct relationship with the powers and forces of creation that love us and ourselves. So we've only known how to survive inside of human. And now that is repaired. I promise it's repaired. And then the book, Have Them Be Not Afraid, talks more about it. And all the visions I've had about this time, and plus the thing that happened around the prophetics 4 years ago, speaks to that something in the greater systems are repairing, including Nassim Haramein talking about new understandings about the universe, and our beginning to think that quantum thinking actually is valid. It's all the same phenomenon, just one has a more mystical connotation, one has a more science-based connotation, but they're coming together as the same thing. So Victoria, over to you. Sorry, I wanted to jump in before I forgot it.
I love that you jumped in, because my perception of thought comes in all the time. Thought is from that quantum field from that point of origin within us. And then it's what's the next?
And if it goes to thinking, the thought evaporates into the
Exactly.
trauma of the
Exactly.
thinking. And that's what's starting to change. Brilliant, brilliant.
And that's the difference between thought and thinking in this book. Okay. The other two other pieces. One is just a playful observation. We're all wearing apricot-like colors today. Okay. And this is how we continue the resonance in the field. So I just wanted to say I love that. And then the next thing is I was leading a class this week, and I brought into it, and I think it's relevant. I brought into it in working with the throat chakra energy that our essential nature is held in the throat chakra, how we express ourselves. And one of the things that I incorporated in was a breathing practice from yoga tradition. And it has a relationship for me with how we respond to what may be perceived as trauma. And when you inhale through your left nostril, and then let it flow, the prana flow through the left right hemisphere of the brain, and then exhale through the right. And then inhale through the right, let it flow across the brain, exhale the left. That cycle of breathing, the inhale is the release of the energy charge, the release of the trauma point. The exhale is the building up of what I'll say is the newness, the on behalf of life. So as you inhale left, you're releasing what you would ask to release. As you then exhale and bring in and build in the goodness, and then exhale. I think that is such a resilience practice that I wanted to make sure, because we can all do it. It's, you can imagine you're inhaling the whole left side of your being nature and the whole right side, and get the whole body in the experience of it. And whether your energy feels frenetic or too much charge, it will balance it and soothe it. If you're feeling lethargic and need some energy, it will balance that in. So this, again, it's the principles of Maat to bring us back into our own harmony of physical, emotional, mental, spiritual harmony that takes us to what Deb, you were saying earlier about there's more, that we're starting to access, that beyond the circumstance, the more. This little practice will bring you into that experience of your more.
Victoria, when I was in those terrible, when I had that heart condition, I was in those terrible cortisol spikes.
Yeah.
That was the only breathing that helped, is I had to get on the side of my body. I couldn't even, like when they say breathe in, count 4 times without breathing. My nervous system was so amped. It wouldn't let it just, I would go, I just couldn't do it. But that breathing,
Yeah.
and I did it just really slow until my body could cycle. It just needed to cycle its trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It just needed to cycle what it was confronted by. And when you're in that level of panic, the body was in that level of panic.
Yeah.
For the first time, I could really see what that did.
Yeah.
Because it's like having bricks that had collapsed. And when I would breathe in, they would stop collapsing, like imagery. And then they would, as I started to breathe out, they would float away. And then I would I can't tell you, there were quite a few days I did it pretty much a lot because it was like my system was collapsing in on me and it needed me to give it some respite. So because it was doing its best job but it needed its personality framework to get on its side. And we haven't been on the side of the body for a long time. We've been educated to stress it. We've been educated to have it tolerate trauma. We've been educated to have it operate dysfunctionally, not be in paradise, basically. Yeah, beautiful.
It's the resourcing of oneself.
Yeah,
That's
it's really beautiful.
Yeah. And all of us can do it immediately.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can do it in the car.
Absolutely. You can sit in the doctor's office while you're waiting to see them, and everybody's like the white coat syndrome. I sit and do that, and they go, "Oh, everything's just quite calm for you." And I'm like,
Yeah.
and you can do it when something is actually happening that is fearful or anxiety provoking. You can actually say, I have a resilience strategy here. I can take 1 minute and pause and just give my system a chance to get on the side of myself on all levels. It's my magic from yoga tradition. It's probably the most fundamental magic I carry.
It really is all levels. As you're talking, I'm imagining doing it. And even just imagining doing it, I can feel a shift. What I notice is, hold on, let's see if I can do this. It's like a space for thought to come in, the way you were describing it earlier. I believe I got it right. Something else can come in that can then, like I've had a lot of times in the last year, let's say, that there's panic or some stressor, and I can't get to anything but more panic and more stress from one point of view. And like there's no access. And I'm thinking of trauma symptoms, hypervigilance or flashbacks or all the things people are associate with PTSD symptoms. They're all like physical super static, and there's no room for or capacity for that thought of you're okay, do this breathing. There's no capacity, so that breathing is making room for thought, which makes room for a focus of attention or choice. And it might be teeny and only in that 30 seconds, but that's change. That still is change. And once that's happened, at least I'm kind of describing my experience. Once it's happened once, then I have some confidence for it can happen again. This can happen. So it isn't a me, identity, whatever you call it, or body. It's not one or the other being dominant and this is the truth. It's a flow together. Wow, Victoria.
I also want to add to that I can't believe this topic came up today because there's still so much I can't talk about the difference between having 30% PVCs that were making me think I was going to die any minute, and the possibility was real, to suddenly having no PVCs and no high blood pressure. It is the most dramatic thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. And I mean dramatic like shocking, like shocking. But the part that I want to say that I don't think we have the ability to comprehend. And Victoria, you might because you've been in this for a long time. And then when you and I worked on your energy soaring through your body, we had We had a direct relationship with that, but I now know it's body first. I know it's body first. And I think how people hear it, that the intelligence is in the body first. And people say forever, the body needs to rest, but we are offended when the body needs to rest. We're offended when the body doesn't want to go pay the bills. And we're offended. We think our mental brain says, oh no, you won't survive. If you don't pay your bills, you won't survive. But whatever happened in having 5 months, 5 months at a daily, every single solitary day, I had to make my body first, or it wasn't going to be here. I'm going to cry. I'm now in the magic of what that is. And pardon me, but darn up yours, society, because I'm not doing you anymore. And I wake up and my body wants to do apricots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there's something about the primordial body. And I really mean not the stress related part of the body, not the trauma survivor part of the body, but the primordial body that wants to be connected to life and have itself feel itself connected to life and have itself feel itself as whole. And one of the strange printouts of that, which has a large mystical conversation to it, but irrelevant in this conversation, is that I turned 78 right at the end of this journey I've been on. I have hated being 70 years old. I have hated the concept of aging on this planet. I mean, I have really been violent about it in my thinking. Because of this through line I went through paying attention to my body, I can feel that in the real reality of the DNA of a human being, that actually 78 is a youngster, because we're actually designed to live 200 years. We now know that for sure. So truthfully, I'm only in one of the first sections of a whole life. And then I remember how every single day having to pay attention to my body, I didn't know if I was going to make it that day. So the teeny little window of relief I got was everything. It was so much more important than the other 20 hours of waking up screaming from terror nightmares and things like that, and no rest available to me. That now I'm going to be those 200 years. It just something shifted. And the truth is, I may die anytime, but I'm back in the right physiological alignment with my DNA. And it is like miraculous. And thank you, because if you hadn't pushed this one, Victoria,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have risked trying to share this, because we're just ignorant. And it's only to do the breathing for most people so we can go back and work for the man. So we can make sure that our children's diapers are changed, so we can make sure our bills are paid. And I'm going to put a book in the chat. And I wish you could remember the book, because I'd like to put that book in the chat. But why don't you search while we're chatting?
I'll go off screen and I'll go get it.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. And
Okay.
I'm going to put another book in the chat, because I've been listening. Thank you, Victoria. I've been listening to a book called Debt. And boy, it reminds me of figuring out. And I love what you said about pit, Deb, because we don't know if pit is the kernel or the shell.
That's right.
I mean, that's how refined the phenomenon of our reality is going right now. But I couldn't listen to Debt all the way through the book that I'm going to put up. But now I'm devouring it, because it's just like what I went through with my body.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn the circumstance of my body and what it was dealing with, so that I could line up with its right action. And now I'm like, the point is, it's going across the board now for me. It's applying to everything else now. Now I'm devouring debt because if I know what my money mind is trying to deal with, maybe I can deal with it effectively. Hold on, I'm going to get to chat, Victoria, and then I'll get it from you, okay?
And I want to respond when you are
Yeah.
done.
All right, Victoria, I'm ready.
Okay. Don't believe everything you think.
Oh God, have I said that for years?
Oh, me too.
And
And
who
then
said bye?
the tagline, which is
Okay.
important too.
Yeah.
Why you're thinking is the beginning and end of suffering.
Well, that certainly validates what I've been after. Maybe we can get her on the show.
That would
Who's the
be
author?
awesome.
The author is Joseph Nguyen,
Spell it.
Nguyen.
Wow.
It's a tiny little book. Those are the best kind.
I can hardly wait.
It's exciting. It's exciting for me because when I started this conversation, since our chat goes invisible, I'm now putting it on our Zoom link so that when I get the chat off the recording, I can post it and create a world. So I have figured out a bridge to our problem. Deb, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm right smack in the middle of this experiment. Like I'm treating myself like an experiment, but with a predetermined outcome. So it's not really. Let's see. It's interesting. I'd almost forgotten already. I just turned 65. And before my birthday, I was having a little trouble with feeling old. When my birthday hit, and all those things of, old, useless, whatever. When my birthday hit, I felt young and couldn't explain it, but I didn't care. It wasn't like I needed to. I just noticed, oh, that's interesting. And just let it sit there because I don't know what it means. I'm going to enjoy it. But how does it fit? That's what I mean by what does it mean? How does it fit in this composition that seems to be rising? So I just let it sit there. Okay, I don't know if I can do this. I keep going off. So I've also noticed that pieces of my thinking keep tracking back to old ways and that I thought had already been left behind. But there they went. There they go, tracking that way. And it feels like it takes a lot to shift them over. So now I've got the breathing thing. That's really cool. And lots of apricot kind of experiences. Like this isn't just about functionally picking up an apricot so I can eat it or make jam. This is about showing the tree I love it. I'm just going to keep using the apricot. I don't have an apricot tree yet, but I'm just going to use it. This is about showing the tree how much we appreciate it, appreciate what it's providing, loving Mother Earth, loving my connection to Mother Earth, and that it's a cycle of life. That's what picking up the apricots would be for me. And, I've got 2 trees in my backyard that I don't know what's happened. I have no idea. They were healthy as all get out last season. Come this winter, they were fine until suddenly they're not. And I could approach that from just a mental way, but I'm trying to look at it like, what's the message here? Not just what do I need to do for the tree. but what's the, and that's been happening in terms of my own body in relationship to activity. A lot of symptoms have come back. I'd gotten used to a couple of months, few months of not much symptoms. I was very excited. Now I can build back my fitness and, so I don't know what this is. You know what I mean? Like I'm in what you just described, Tantra, of living it out to find the relational components, not just what do I do, but it's partly what do I do. Uh, So but I
Yep,
can't do
but
it the old way.
it's not based on what do I do to fix me anymore. It's based on, and again, what this thing called thought, well, what I call thinking, which is kind of a juxtaposition with the two fields,
Right.
because I call thinking what he calls thinking,
Yes,
but it's
yes.
still the same frame. But the point is that our thinking is trying to think about something as if thinking about it will solve it.
Right.
The cognition is taking in information obsessively sometimes because something happens in the neural fiber of the brain when you take in left and right brain sense. So you have the sensory. So you said, when you said, what is it for me to know about the tree? In the old paradigm, it's what am I supposed to learn because I'm being punished? And whatever's rising is that what creates a relational field of connection between me and the tree because I crave it. I crave that connection, not I crave the apricots so I can eat. I crave the connection, and in that secondary, I crave the apricots, which I can now eat.
Yes.
So it's also what the prophetics last year were all about: stop the usury, stop being used, and stop using, and start being with, which is also our authentic thinking, is being with another in the field, being with our thinking,
Mm-hmm.
being with thought without falling victim to what thought has gotten captured by, which is basically something's wrong and we need to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
not something's present and we need to be with it. So I just wanted to add that.
That is a brilliant way to start untangling the collapse. Like I'm in a different recursion of the collapse, but I can tell like a year ago, it would have been, I felt the collapse and I felt the strong pull towards come back to the usury, to society, come back. But now it's on behalf of, uh, I don't know a term. I can't get it forward, but what you said
Well,
of,
I want to also say something psychically is that what we can count on in our bodies is if we're supposed to be here, the body is finding a way to help us come back for this time because it's the one that is repairing itself on behalf of New Futures Rising. It's the one that's informing the personality that we're not, unless we're in a devolutionary path. That's what I didn't know. I didn't know if I was at my end of days.
yeah.
And it wasn't about staying alive or dying. It was about literally being viable in the progression of evolution,
Mm-hmm.
being the authentic. If my body could evolve, I wanted to give it a chance to evolve, and it has, shockingly so.
And I'd like to thread a little bit between the two of you in that sense of the untangling that you were talking about, Deb. For me, when the untangling begins to happen, you can recognize or see the reveal of the interconnectivity that's always present. And that was prominent in my meditation practice this week, this web of interconnectivity. And I think that's the relationship to the tree, the relationship to us in a primordial relationship with Mother Earth, that we are in that interconnectivity, and we are realizing this again, that it's always been there, but when we get out of the thunking, we're in the recognition that we are interrelated, interactive. Intra-related is that new place that you've been going, which is, I'm still threading that one. The inter and intra worlds. Yeah.
For what she's talking about, the word inter means between, and the word intra means within.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just getting cognitively exploratory about that.
Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes. I want to say something. I want to talk about how long we've been doing this, which is a couple of years or more. It really is our commitment to just be a part of a greater community called human being, and just sharing what we're experiencing. And we, by our doing it and by our wanting to come on every week, it has been a vitality maker. It has been life enhancing and life generative for us, because it's really important for human beings in an evolutionary moment, in a Renaissance moment, to have a place to share. It's just really important. One of the things that has been challenging is in the different websites. I have one, but mine's dismantling also. In the different websites, to try to create a website with language, when actually we're beyond the language we've been in.
Right.
And we're not in new language that holds what's forming. So I thought of, and we don't do this. I went to a convention once. I guess this is the end of our hour, what I'm about to say. I went to a convention once, and the new model of advertising was tell a story and hook them for your product. And which is really at the root true, because then you know who the person is, you know the journey they've taken, but not to be used to hook human beings for your gain. But so this whole idea of a shared field has actually been quite a challenge for those of us who do want to interface with the public. And I come with an already existing clientele. So my job has been my position's a little easier, because people can say, just go do a body of work with her, just do it, but we really, in the work of the field of Tantra Maat and the books, You as the Language of Creation, You as the Mind of Creation, is how do we articulate and language something that isn't in the model of reality we were born into, isn't that, and something new that's forming. So this morning I said to the people in CreateAWorld, the ones that are participatory, which is Electra Porzel, Liz Geyer, Lori Cantrell, am I right? Kenton, Victoria McMahon, and Deborah Merchant, and myself, and Janice Cornetti. I said, let's just give people a way to contact us if they feel drawn, if they feel pulled, and then we'll just all flop around and figure it out from there. And so I don't know if we've gone on to our Facebook page on CreateAWorld or not. I frankly can't even get in it because I no longer show up as an admin. So it seems like there's these blockages happening everywhere. But honest to goodness, if you feel called to connect, please connect. And we promise not to use your connection without our caring for you and a shared thought that maybe this is someplace you can be a resource for yourself.
Yes.
We shouldn't be a resource for you. I'm sorry, we should be a resource for you, but we shouldn't be a source for you. You need to be a resource for yourself, and then you can use us effectively.
Yes.
And that's real. That is real reciprocation. On my Out Past the Edge, I talk about reciprocal. I recommend that you go listen to it, because it's part of that which is relationally oriented. not usury oriented. And just that's my end of our talk. And I'll turn Victoria and Deb, whatever you all want to end with.
I'm just so on board with being a source for people to re-source themselves.
Me too.
And that is on behalf of life. And that's yay.
Yeah. That's really the only way I've ever been able to operate. And I'm very happy that it's beginning to fit what living a human life is now.
Beautiful. Thank you, both of you. It's been great as usual. And thank all of you that are here. And
Yes.
thank all of you that watch it later because,
Yep.
you know, I'm noticing we're getting like a lot of views later. 175 was the last amount of people. So we're just really appreciative that hanging out together is also hanging out with you.
Yes.
Take